Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 28 of Heathen Talk podcast. Lauren gave me the thumbs up. I got it right. I didn't even have to ask. Tonight we're going to talk about sources. We have a special guest, but you guys are in for a special treat before we get to that because Thorin's going to do something for the second time in a row.
Once again, I have drawn the short straw and telling you all about our social media. So, again, I'm going to follow the script and then promptly ignore it when I get bored with it. Do you love Heathen Talk? Please go to iTunes or whatever platform you use to give us a review. And we're really serious about that. Because the iTunes reviews let people know that you're actually watching our show so that we can get reviews and we can get higher up on the ratings charts. Believe it or not, it does make a difference. Also, make sure you like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube. The same stuff goes for YouTube. Do you want to do more? Go to our website and check out our swag section where you can pick up Heathen Talk t-shirts, coffee mugs, consider becoming a Patreon supporter of Heathen Talk, all that great stuff, because that helps us actually keep this stuff on the air. And keep a lookout in the near future. We do have some new t-shirts coming up. We're just waiting to be able to pay our artists so we can get you one of the most awesome t-shirts that will ever grace your closet. And that's another pimp for giving us money so we can pay our artists. But I think that's about all for the social media pitch. Back to you, Josh.
Thorin forgot something.
I did everything in the script, so you shut up.
You can find all that information on
Heathen
Our
Talk
website, www.heathentalk.com, designed by the lovely Lauren.
I do.
And
web
if you're listening to this,
email me.
all right, I'm going to speak now, and y'all are going to listen.
Yes, boss.
Yes, boss.
If you listen to this on YouTube, your Android phone, whatever, I don't care. Go to iTunes.com and review the podcast. It'll help us out a lot. Give us a good review because we do nice things for you. And that way we get better ratings and more viewers. And you can have more people to yell at in the IRC.
You say give us a good review like anybody would do anything otherwise.
Well,
have you looked at our website this week?
It's full of wonderful people saying very nice things to us.
Uh-huh.
all two of them. So, Lauren, who are we toasting?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the people who've sent in toast proposals. That really means a lot to us because it means we're able to talk about the people who are actually doing things. So this week's toast was sent in to us by Gage. He is actually the toast steward in New York City, and he wants to toast Annie and Matt of Kindred of Man of New Jersey. Annie teaches classes on medieval history, learning Old Norse, and does great presentations on Manxian folklore, that is, folklore of the Isle of Man. Matt is a firefighter EMT who saves lives and sometimes helps witness their passing. Both are awesome people. In 2015, they just had a son named Arthur. So thank you for sending that in, and definitely want to raise a drink to Annie and Matt of Kindred of Man in New Jersey. Hail.
So, as is our tradition, we're going to tell you all what we're drinking because it's what we do. Chris, as our guest, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, I'm one of those juice horn heathens. I'm a heathen in recovery, so I'm keeping it light tonight, and I'm drinking a mug root beer.
It's the second best kind of root beer.
I got married a couple weekends ago, and I have a lot of refreshments left over, so I'm kind of putting them to use, I guess.
So what do you think? So what do you think is the best one, Josh?
Barg's. Barg's is the best root beer. It has bite.
That is so wrong. The best root beer is a Beta.
No.
Because the Abita man can.
No. The best root beer is Snoqualmie.
Abita. You're
so
wrong.
So, Lauren, you're not drinking root beer. What are you drinking?
I am drinking some wonderful peppermint tea, hot tea, because I am still recovering from getting my wisdom teeth out on Friday. So, yeah, plus I'm also a juice horn heathen, so, yeah, no more alcohol for me. So, what you drinking, Josh?
I am drinking Hopscotch, a Scottish-inspired dry hop strong ale by Gilgamesh. It's quite delicious.
You're on a kick with that Gilgamesh stuff, aren't you?
It's easy to find. Unlike Ninkasi.
Hey, Ninkasi. We know you're listening.
Thorin, what are you drinking, man?
I'm drinking Sam Smith's Winter Welcome Ale because I had the bottle sitting around, didn't have time to stop for anything else. There's the nice convoluted label with way too much stuff on it. Anyways, it's a pretty decent winter ale. I mean, it tastes kind of like dry fruit, and it's like fruitcake meets beer. It's pretty good.
I haven't tried that one. I do like Sam Smith, though. They're a good brewery.
They do good stuff.
So, y'all have heard him talk already, as he told you what he was drinking. But our guest tonight is Christopher Harrington. He's a husband and father of twin 13-month-old boys. So he's given up some valuable quiet time to be here with us. He's a grad student and a biological anthropologist at a research university. He works with a population of indigenous peoples in the western Amazon. He's been a wildland firefighter and apparently is a connoisseur of all things obnoxiously spicy.
That's
now,
right.
What was the name of those deviled eggs I had when you guys had your park thing?
Oh, yeah, Certs Fire.
Those were intense. They were delicious.
Certs Fire eggs, yeah.
He's a native of Los Angeles, but has been living in, everybody drink, Cascadia for the last 9 years.
Yay.
Yay.
He also
I
is
thought we drunk for Cascadia Moot, not Cascadia. Drink 2 more times.
Hey, well, you know, if I'm going to try to convince the Raven Radio people that their fans need to drink whenever they mention New Mexico, we can do the same for Cascadia, I think.
He's also a founding member of Two Wolves Kindred. Thank you for being on the show, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Great to be here.
So, I don't think anyone actually filled out a show outline this week because it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But we wanted to talk tonight about sources, why they're important, and why it's important that you be able to competently navigate them. And what better resource than a biological anthropologist who deals in pretty much nothing but sources. So, I got no segue here, kids.
Okay, so I just want to start out with, I kind of feel like in college, like almost every class that I've had always starts out with, oh my God, how to find good sources, how to find bad sources. But maybe we should, maybe we can start out with kind of, the red flags of this is probably some MUS.
If it's found in the Wiccan section, probably.
Well, yeah.
So
that's a place a lot of people start, when they're looking, for this type
Went to a Wiccan seminary. Yeah, I know.
So, but that is a really important thing. Even in academia, when we're looking at a lot of these sources, is there any way to really delineate between something that is really up to scratch versus something that may be, for instance, some Victorian age mumbo jumbo?
I think with anything you can get opposing viewpoints or outliers when it comes to data, and you see that with the big the like science positions where it comes to climate change, vaccinations. There's always a fringe scientist who's on the end of that. But I'd say when it comes to sourcing heathen material, if there is such a thing as consensus, I try and find out what that is first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I know that like the Victorian era thing is kind of my big thing I harp on because a lot of our first generational heathenry comes from is so heavily influenced by that because of, and it kind of ties actually back into Wicca, where you have the issue of people accepting that pan-Indo-European matriarchal goddess fertility cult that that Margaret Murray's hypothesis she put forth in the 20s, which was preceded by Hans something. I can't remember his last name. A guy who basically never left his house, yet somehow was considered an anthropologist. And an expert on Egyptology. So
standards were different once upon a time.
yeah, it was like the 1860s, I think. So
that was back when we were still rescuing art from the indigenous peoples.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that to me, a lot of, I think that, I'll be completely honest, but the Victorian era romanticism of the Vikings probably is the one area when I am either looking at sources or I'm talking to someone that the most common, I should say, area where people get bad sources from are, you know, that kind of romanticizing of the Vikings, the Wagner horned helmet stuff.
So specifically, Chris, in your line of research, right, do you run across any similar issues regarding, because you're biological anthropologists, right, do you run across anything that kind of runs parallel to some of the streams you find in heathenry at all?
Oh, like in what regards?
Well, so when you're doing your research and you're looking at the way the population has changed over time, how it's or what effect the environment's had on those, do you find yourself finding resources outside of the heathen sphere that apply well to learning about, say, our ancestors?
I'm not sure if I really got that, but I mean, yeah, I can draw from a multitude of sources, be them sometimes not the most conventional ones. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, with what I do, essentially, if anybody's confused as what biological anthropology is, it's essentially, if I was in the UK right now, I wouldn't be considered an anthropologist necessarily. I'd be considered an evolutionary biologist, right? So, but what that does take into account are, yes, like environmental changes, historical occurrences. Yeah, so I mean, you have to draw from some folkloric sources to gain better insight. So it does come from a multitude of disciplines sometimes, and being open to other areas. But I think that's where sources are a good thing, but having a built-in bullshit detector, I think, is the most crucial part. And
well, I think
it's hard to teach.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This episode has been 14 minutes long.
Well, I think I was going to say that brings us into trying to figure out how you build that bullshit detector that you need, because it should be built in, but most people don't start with one. And you know, I was thinking a little bit earlier when you guys were commenting on the concepts of like the Victorian romanticized idea of the Vikings being something that was a huge influence on early heathenry and is still rearing its ugly head to this day about it, that one of those first things you can, you know, get when you're looking at sources is it supposed to be a theological text that keeps talking about the Vikings with that, by that word, keeps talking about the Vikings believe this and the Vikings believe that.
Right, and I think having a baseline knowledge is really where you get that bullshit detector. You know, I mean, that's, to my knowledge, that's why you're required to take certain core classes before you can start studying evolutionary biology, so that you have some basic knowledge.
Right. I mean, the point I'm kind of getting at here is that you need to look at the language of your source from the beginning. And yeah, I'm not trying to say that you should never go to, like, for lack of a better term, pop sources. there are some good sources out there that are not heavy academic tomes that are directly discussing, heathenry. One that we've talked of before has been
HeathenTalk.com.
Yes, I'm going to butcher the title of this because I always do, but I'll get the author correct. It's A Practical Heathen's Guide to Asatru by Patricia LaFalve. I probably butchered her last name, if anybody can correct me. But if anybody in the IRC knows that one, you should probably put the proper spelling of that last name up for me. Her book is definitely not a heavily academic book. But when she talks about it, she uses certain indicator words. She talks about how she's not trying to put out a, pan-Norse type of belief, that she's talking about, this is what she's familiar with. She doesn't constantly reference the Vikings believe this. She doesn't couch everything as though it was a big monolithic belief system, and that's probably a good beginning of building that bullshit detector, is whether or not the historical beliefs of our people, or of our predecessors, were a big monolithic thing. If they start talking about it like it was, you're reading bad information.
When it's hard too, I think. Some things are well written as far as entertainment value goes, and it's hard if you're not looking for deception or entertainment to not be duped by those sort of things. I had to find out through a Facebook Asatru page that my rune tattoo didn't really mean what I thought it meant. And the scientist in me, who's, I'm trying to be objective and admit when I'm wrong, I had to acknowledge, I fell for some BS. Had to get pointed towards some more accurate sources and own my wrong there.
It happens to the best of us.
What do I know? I'm just some guy with a bulk knot tattoo also, so.
As Toby's fond of pointing out, if you're not ashamed of what you were doing 5 years ago in heathenry, then you're not doing it right.
Absolutely.
So, when we're, obviously, all of us here spend a lot of time talking about heathenry. Thorin, Lauren, and I have a weekly podcast where we spend 90 minutes talking about heathenry. We have blogs. Chris, you've got your group that you help administrate there.
Yeah.
What sources can't be the end-all be-all of what we're doing? So how do you integrate sources into these conversations without sounding like a bibliography?
Am I taking this one?
Whoever wants to take it. You spoke first, so it's your turn.
Okay. Well, I think that I should rewind a little bit and back it up and state that, at heart, I'm not really an academic. I don't learn well from reading. I've just been able to navigate this world. I say I walk in two worlds now. I know the working class. I was raised it. It'll never leave my blood. But I also wanted a shot at a retirement and not to blow out my body. So I decided a job in academia, maybe I'll be able to travel and get paid to eat cool food and stuff. But it's not really my environment. And I don't think it has to be for a lot of heathens when practicing heathenry. I think, and I've heard you mention it on the show before, that so much of it is, you can't do it solitary. And I can digest some of the material that I read from quality sources, but then when putting it into practical application on a kindred level at Sumble, it doesn't have to be dry and academic. You know what I mean? There's once it flows into the community, it can just, in practice, it doesn't have to come. It doesn't have to have any hint of that. Because really, storytelling and learning from others, and that's really how I learn.
Well, that really does kind of bring in another end of the back to the bullshit detector conversation. And how you build that in is that, to a certain extent, we heathens do have a built-in bullshit detector that we can use as a great start. That's other heathens.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact of the matter is, not everybody, heathenry differs from a few other popular pagan religions in that it's not an every man a priest sort of situation. And it's not going to be every man a theologian. There are going to be probably the majority who do their best to learn from others as they can and to just make sure they're doing it right. Because, as we pointed out before, heathens do. But there is a significant population of heathens out there that are doing their best to figure this stuff out. And the best way to, get the beginnings of your bullshit detector is to talk to other heathens, get the reputation of the sources that you're dealing with. If you pick up this book and I'm trying to think of a really bad one. Somebody give me a really bad one that's out there.
I refuse to say the first thing that came to mind.
Anything by Raven.
Let's just make one up.
Raven Caldera sounds like a made-up name. So you get
Ladies
that.
and gentlemen, controversy brought to you by Thorin. At least it's not me this time.
We keep passing it back and forth, Josh. So you get a book by that, and I see this all the time. Hey, I found this book. It's supposed to be about heathenry. Does anybody have any ideas about this? We see it on the Asatru subreddit all the time. People finding books and coming to ask the community there what people think about it. And sometimes they get, that's, a decent source. That's a good book to read. You should read that. Or, I don't really know nothing about that. I haven't really heard that. Or we get some books where it's like, no, that is absolute trash. The best use you can make of it is to start a fire with it, but don't cook anything over that fire because it's going to be terrible. And
it's true, and I've seen that on multiple heathen forums. Like when I was active in Asatru lore, there was an entire sub-forum dedicated to, hey, have you read this book?
Well, I think even over on the subreddit, in our bibliography that we have that we're building up there more and more every day, we do have an entire section of these are things you shouldn't read, or if you do, you should know they're crap before you read them.
And just a plug, that got updated this week, so it has all the links are working now. Just a plug there.
Thanks to Lauren. She has been the latest in a long line of people to whitewash our fence for us over there. Much appreciation.
I think it's kind of interesting, that I think sometimes it's harder now. Yeah, I've been around heathenry now for about 15 years, and I think it's harder now sometimes to find sources. I feel like the noise level's higher. So even though, I feel like there was this point, say, 10 years ago, where it was kind of that sweet spot where you had a lot of access to things as far as books and stuff, but the noise level wasn't quite as high as it is now. And I think sometimes now even it's the signal to noise ratio can be a little high to try to find good information. Even, honestly, if you got on some of the bigger Facebook groups and I'm not going to name names, but they know who they are, and said, hey, what do you think about, this book? And it's a crap book. You're going to have sycophants of whoever that person is come and tell you it's the gospel truth. And so sometimes that's not always the best way to tell if something's a good source or not. You have to have a trustworthy group of people to ask.
Right. It's not always the best way, but it's a good start. And when you've got nothing, it's the best source you got.
And I would agree there. That's why I think it is so important, and we have beat this into the ground so many times, but I think it's so important for you to start building that, local network, people that face to face that you can say, hey, I need some help. I need, point me in a good direction.
Well, Chris and I met because we both were looking for some face-to-face heathenry. We met at an Easter thing up on top of a hill, actually. And that's really where my heathenry with other people started, and it was because there were people like Chris who were able to be friendly with me and be not even just a source, but a resource that made it something I could really get into.
Right, and I agree. Same, I think a couple members of your kindred I had met maybe 2 years prior to that. The Burks, that was before people were meeting on Facebook. It was through a Yahoo or something, and I had no idea what I was getting into, and they had no idea who was coming over, but I went to their house and they had me over, and and I learned heathenry from them, and I read a lot about it and saw a lot of books and heard a lot of things and chat rooms and whatnot, but I learned it from face-to-face interactions. Kind of like the difference of looking at a climber manual for a car and then actually like hanging out with some mechanics.
And, I really appreciate that we are actually getting to a point now in heathenry that we can say, hey, people can actually start learning in ways other than everyone has to be a scholar. Because not everybody's meant to be a scholar, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's not realistic, and there's the whole it's the religion with homework, and honestly I hate that. For me it's a religion with homework, but members of my kindred, it's like that's not what it is for them, and that's not. Everybody learns in different ways, and if that's the only way people are going to get it. I'm not in like super worried about making it become this big huge thing. I have a kindred and I'm good with that, but if we're ever going to have bigger numbers, I think there needs to be more and better mediums for people to learn heathenry from. Storytelling, I think, and passing it along and just being a living example, really.
I think I think everybody here in this all the hosts in this podcast, probably everybody involved in this podcast has been guilty, if you want to use that word, at one point or another of using the phrase "the religion with homework." I know I definitely have. But I think in recent years, the meaning of that is starting to shift. It's not necessarily about going out and doing the scholarly work anymore, because that's being done. I won't say it's been done, because it's still being done. It's going to be being done for a long time. But the meaning is starting to shift into make sure you know what you're doing. And that's either going to be through doing that kind of work or finding somebody who has and learning from them.
Well, and it comes down to something that I say all the time: go and do. And if you're not doing it, then it's going to be really hard to learn how to do it better.
I 100% agree, and I think that it is so important to go and do, and people, and we are at. I just love that we're at a point now where heathenry can be easily taught as something that is hands-on. That really actually excites me, because that means that there are more ways and the barriers into heathenry are not as high. One of the things that I have complained about before in the past is, that's part of the reason we started the Accessible Heathenry Project, was there is a barrier to people, or has been for a long time, for people who have visual impairments or people who have other reading disabilities. It's and there's 3 learning styles. So we have to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb here and say this conversation is not as boisterous as I had hoped it would be about sources. So I'm going to throw us a curveball. We're going to switch topics, completely unprepared, halfway through a show.
Yes.
Well, we were unprepared going into the first half of the show, so why not?
Yeah, okay, what's one more?
Chris, there's something you're very passionate about that we've talked about previously, and we were going to have an entire show, and we'll probably have you on again to talk about it. Let's switch topics and talk about heathenry and recovery.
Okay.
Obviously, I have no experience with this. I'm not in recovery. I have nothing to go on here. I know Lauren is active in that community, and I know you are, so I'm going to hinge on your guys' input and knowledge here, and hopefully everybody will learn something new today.
Okay. Cool. So the sources topic academic sources wasn't exciting enough for everyone.
I think we could have done a lot better with it if any of us had had time to really prepare for this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically what we're saying is we'll have to come back to academic sources after we've had time to actually, read some.
Sure. Okay,
Ouch.
let's do it. I can tell you recovery and the things that go along with it are certainly action-packed. That's for sure. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin with that one. I can get real long-winded. So
We like long-winded. Have you met Thorin? He doesn't shut up.
I will say that I've been involved in the recovery community now for about 1.5 years, and I have found it to be very challenging, especially living in, I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt, to be heathen and also to be in recovery, because just so many people here are Christian. It's a place where the Christian overculture can be very intense. There's a good way to say it.
Sure, absolutely. I've done quite a bit of traveling, extensively, 48 states in the U.S., 17 different countries, I believe, and I've seen quite a few different areas of the U.S. and yes, the Arkansas is it's a unique little pocket. I'll give you that.
At least I'm lucky enough to live in civilization. I feel bad for the people that live
Hold up. We have already established you don't live in civilization.
No,
The
you
three
live
of
in
us live in civilization.
Yeah.
I'm side-eyeing you so hard. For those of you listening to the audio later,
Dirty looks make great radio.
They really do. I should know better. I did radio for a long time, but yeah.
Your hate is keeping me warm.
As it should.
All right, Chris, you were trying to say something. We kept talking over you. I'm sorry.
That's cool. I probably have a polar opposite experience as far as my recovery goes. I live in Springfield now, but it's just across the river from Eugene. So Eugene, Oregon is a liberal bastion. It's full of all sorts of different types, and a lot of nobody cares what you believe. And so in the rooms of recovery, the higher power thing is, you get a little bit of Jesus talk, but it was, and there's the slight bits of obvious Christian overculture, but it's nothing overwhelming, I feel like.
It's an overculture.
Yeah, drink. Now, I will say that, I'm involved with a smaller recovery group, and so it's not... I've kind of noticed around here, the smaller the group, when you get to groups within the 12-step communities, you have your really big groups, and you kind of start getting into your niche groups. It's not nearly as bad. I will say that, here for the 12-step meetings I go to, everybody has been wonderful, super accepting of me being heathen. My sponsor is the best Southern Baptist Catholic you'll ever meet, but she's totally, in line with, and she totally is, she's never tried to convert me or anything else. But, Yeah, I mean it's different, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like the values that are espoused within recovery are much more heathen than they are Christian.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I just what came to mind first off was like I always hear people talking about being judgmental, and I don't have a problem with being judgmental. I get judgmental. I'm good with it. I like it, and I'm okay. um, Oftentimes, that is certainly a Christian sort of strategy to allegedly be non-judgmental, but I'm not buying it, and
Being judgmental and the shame culture that can develop around that is a really powerful tool in heathenry.
I agree, and I think that there is a way to be discerning and engage that shame culture without necessarily being like crazy judgmental. I need to be up in your business, and that to me is like the judgmental part. I wish that I had to work on was not yes, I can say what they're doing is wrong, but the fact of the matter is, not my circus, not my monkeys.
sure, there's a certain amount of compassion I have to have around people in the rooms of recovery that are not doing so well in life, and I need to be positive and encourage them to come back, because what they need is a comfortable place in that 12-step program to reliably be able to come back to. So I'm not going to be rude about it, but if relapse Reggie wants to get an apartment, like I'm not getting one with him. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm going to be a little judgmental there. But do I wish him the best? Do I want him to stay clean? Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
part of shame culture is just not necessarily being an ass, but letting somebody know when their reputation is shit.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And the man that I'm sponsored by, a great guy, and the men that I sponsor, they'd rather hear the truth, and even if it's uncomfortable. So I'm gonna say, like, you're not really pulling it off right now, guy.
And the thing is that if you can't be honest, honesty is something that addicts struggle with, and that is, so being honest and learning how to be honest without being cruel is a skill you learn in recovery, to one that quite frankly a lot of people could learn. But that's been a tool that I've learned, to learn to be honest without being mean, and bring it from a place of actually not just trying to beat somebody else down.
Right. Yeah. It took a lot of practice for me with that one as well, because my favorite time to be honest was when I was using it as a weapon, and then when I started practicing being a more wholesome individual, I found myself struggling with certain aspects of honesty, or if I didn't know how to do it tactfully, just biting my tongue until I was able to honestly tell somebody what I thought, even if it wasn't pleasant.
Now, another topic that's... Sorry, did you have something more on this one, Josh?
I was going to ask a question.
Well, go ahead.
Have you come across any unique difficulties when it comes to recovery in heathenry? Not necessarily dealing with the community around recovering, but dealing with other heathens.
I have, because I have been, granted, I have not really been, my vice is not alcohol, so, but, I have seen and been around in situations where people were just so adamant that you had to drink from the horn, and you can't kiss the horn, you can't raise the horn, you have to drink from the horn, and pushing it on people who have addictions is just, sometimes I feel like people weren't, heathens in general could be less than understanding, and there is a lot of bootstrapping mentality in heathenry, and that to me can be conflicting with recovery, because so much of recovery is, because as someone who has an addiction, I'm a control freak. Oh man, and as you guys have seen, but I was much worse. When I'm full blown into my addiction, I'm crazy, and having to learn to let go and ask for help. Sometimes that can go, especially if you're around people who kind of subscribe to the more Americanized first generation Nine Noble Virtues form. You can actually be like, for trying to get help and all of that, I have gotten some pushback. And then also just trying to line up a concept of a higher power that I can turn to, and also how I believe the deity is in heathenry is another one that personally, that's probably been the biggest thing that I struggle to wrap my mind around and put together, is that belief I have that I can let go of things to the universe, and how that meshes back in with heathenry. And I just don't have other heathens who are in recovery to talk to. I mean, like, you legitimately are the first one that I've met in a long time. So.
Yeah, some of the concepts I think were easier for me to take in than, there's a couple heathen and recovery groups online, but for me, I was a card-carrying atheist when I got clean. I've been clean since December 11th, 2008, so just over 7 years, and I considered myself an atheist, but I did sort of have like what I called at the time like pagan leanings, or I believed in whatever my ancestors did. I didn't have a name for that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where to find it. But I started working the 12 steps, and I got to the third step, and I was open-minded to the higher power thing, and I found heathenry, and I made it fit. Now I know people who are heathens who then struggle with addictions, have a harder time, or at least they say they do, making it fit for their established spiritual beliefs.
And that's kind of where I am with it. I ended up, to me, my higher power is my DCR, and that's just kind of how I roll with it. And there's a little cognitive dissonance there, but so far so good. It works. I have a year, a week from today, so coming up. I'm excited.
Yeah, and there's certain concepts like, they like to finish with like sometimes like prayers like "Take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery." The heathenry, we don't give up our will. We're strong-willed, right? But I mean, that's it. Like, I think of the Norns. My fate is kind of spun. Sometimes I need to know when maybe I'm going against that or when I'm aligned with it. But the other thing too is, like, for me, working a program of recovery I have to do it. I have a dishonorable life, and I'm an embarrassment as a heathen if I'm not living in recovery. So I don't care how it works or if there's conflict or contradiction. Like, I'm gonna do it anyways, and I think that makes me even more of a heathen. So.
And I really appreciate that, because that's kind of where I've come to, is that my recovery has to be a priority, or I can't do for anyone else. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If it's not my recovery is not a priority, if I'm not actively seeking recovery, I'm useless to everyone, and I'm useless to my tribe.
Right. And I mean, it's had great benefits for me too. Like, I felt like I was on the right path, and my spiritual life lined up quite nicely. And the first thing I did probably was get a hammer, and a couple guys that I've been seeing around, they had the same leanings I did, and it turned into I got a kindred out of it, and I mean, I had met other heathens, but like, my Inagard, my guys, man, they it just happened naturally, so I knew I was on the right path with it.
Man, and it's just amazing when it just works. I think I can say that. I will. We get a lot of questions, and I've gotten some questions to Aunt Helga about I want to find a kindred. How do I form a kindred? And the truth of the matter is, kindreds form. Rarely are they super intentional.
So, on kind of a practical note, leaning in this direction, personally up in this area, I've met more than a couple of heathens in recovery, depending on how you use or define the term in recovery. Everything from being in 12-step programs or just from being people that acknowledge they had a problem and were taking it upon themselves to fix their issues. And one of the biggest difficulties I've seen in heathen circles for it is that as much as we're known as the religion with homework, we're also known as the religion with alcohol. So there's definitely, an issue there because there's always alcohol. Where two or more heathens gather, there's 3 drinks. Yeah. So
Well,
how do you deal with that?
my ex-husband, who is an alcoholic, or was an alcoholic, I'm not really sure what his status is right now, but was an active alcoholic when we were married. The main reason he wanted to become heathen because he felt it justified his alcoholism. And I've met lots of people who have the same. I've met many heathen men, mostly I hate to generalize, but who have used heathenry as an excuse to continue to engage in addictive behaviors, usually alcohol.
So, I guess my real question, I have my own answers for it, but my real question is, in your various necks of the wood, how do you deal with, that particular area of heathenry when, you can't drink for one reason or another and people are obviously pushing it and using ritual as an excuse?
Well, I know.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I haven't encountered that. My experience is the first stumble. I can't recall if it's stumble or bloat, but that I went to was before Josh was apart, but his kindred, and we were up in outside Portland, and I remember telling one of the chieftains, like right before it started, I didn't know how to break the news, but and I probably looked like a junior high kid asking a girl for a date. I think I was dragging my toe in the dirt, and being like, and I was like, hey man, me and my buddy, we don't drink, and he didn't even bat an eye, he was like, that's fine, and he gave me the options of what we can do, and we came in there humble, and wanting to follow customs, but that was one where there would have been that tension had I had to be like, I can't drink here, even if it is a religious ceremony, I can't do it. But I don't recall if it was that time or another time, but they've had juice horns there for some of the kids. Some of the kids drink mead, some don't. Maybe I just tapped the horn to my head or whatever, but they were okay with it. And as far as my kindred goes, when you see us all together, we're not the kind of guys who are just gonna really have somebody tell us we're doing it wrong.
It's true. They can be a little intimidating when you see them all in a group together.
I think the juice horn thing is such a good idea, and I think especially if you're getting into, and this is just a practicality thing, if you're getting into a stumble where you're going to go more than 3 rounds, I'm talking to you, you know who I'm talking about, you know what stumble I'm talking about. It's a good idea to pass a water horn or a juice horn or a non-alcoholic horn, even if you don't have a single, active, person who can't drink. Because, and the other thing is, our heathen population we're getting older, and I don't drink alcohol. I said alcohol is not my addiction. I don't drink alcohol because of the medication I'm on. And there's a lot of people, in that circumstance where they, because of medication or diet or something else, it's not just people who have alcohol problems. And so, we always make sure that there's either an alternative horn, or if it's just me, I'll just kiss the side of the horn because that's our tradition. But beyond that, it's just good manners and hospitality to have a juice horn or a milk horn or a water horn or a whatever horn.
Yeah, we like using goat milk sometimes. That one works for us. But
I've never. That's a really good idea. We've done fresh milk before, but never goat's milk.
yeah,
I know in my immediate area, amongst the heathens that I know personally around here, the tradition is usually just to raise the horn. And I got to say, I've run into a few issues where, there have been people that have tried to insist. And the fortunate thing around here is there's always, 5 people up that person's ass like that, about how, that's not their place to insist. And, pointing out that that person is being a better heathen for turning it down if they have good reason to.
absolutely.
Because like Lauren pointed out, I mean, if you have a problem with it without recognizing that problem and doing something about it, you're a failure to yourself and you're a failure to your people. So.
Absolutely. And I'd never oath to not drink or use again. I'd never oath. I'd just keep it on a this is what I'm doing for today kind of basis. But in accordance with my own personal interpretation of heathen values, absolutely. If I or the guys that are in my kindred, who not everyone in my kindred is in recovery, and I won't blow anybody's anonymity, but some are and some aren't. If I partake in substances right now, it's I'm a living amends by not partaking, and so if I drink right now, it's kind of a slap into the face to those who worried about me when I was drinking. My mother knows that I don't do that anymore. She's very proud of the man I am right now, and for me, this is my spiritual path is very much in line with my ancestors and my family, and if I'm not living in a way that honors them, then I'm doing it wrong, and so it would be an embarrassment to myself by going back.
Absolutely, totally, 100% agree with what you said, and understand, because that's at the end of the day. We say this, and I worry sometimes it will get to the point of it's cliche, but at the end of the day, heathen ethics are that which is good for the tribe is good. And, I mean, being an active addict is never good for anyone except maybe, no one.
And it comes down to any awkwardness or dishonor I may feel from refusing a mead horn would be far outweighed by the dishonor I would face by accepting the mead horn. And I've had to look at that and accept that, and I'm okay with either way. It won't turn out good, so I go the lesser route on that.
Now I will say, because my recovery has been very 12-step focused, which is kind of the predominant thing out there. I mean, there's rational recovery. There are some pagan Wiccan. There is a Wiccan-oriented 12-step group that meets not here in Little Rock, but not far from here. But generally, 12-step. And so I find that when you get to the later steps, when you start talking about, actually, especially when you get to the made direct amends for what you've done, is so heathen. When you get to that point where, because in Christianity you're taught, well, you should forgive people and they shouldn't have to apologize for you to forgive them. Heathenry ain't like that, and actually making the amends is so heathen. So heathen.
And a lot of people confuse making amends with apologizing, but right, we know making amends is not only apologizing, but if I kick over your fence when I'm wasted, I can apologize for that, but I also have to mend it, right? I have to fix what I have done. So it's apology with action as well. So yeah, I totally agree. Another heathen concept that I think is kind of tied in with it as well is luck too, and familial luck.
Mm-hmm.
And it could just be the way our ancestors interpreted these types of things, and how things are passed along genetically. earlier heathen days, maybe that was how luck was considered, or maybe there is a more spiritual component. But for me, addiction is a family disease. And it's my great-grandfather, sorry, he died super wasted celebrating the victory of World War II. And my family story is he was so drunk he still don't know he's dead, right? My father was a Vietnam veteran, came back not doing so well. He was actually strung out before the war. I didn't know that till recently, but he was your average Vietnam veteran, wounded in combat, turned pretty heroin addict, died from an overdose when I was 9. And then somehow knowing those things and not having to hear a say no message, because I was living that at home, why you shouldn't do it. Still, it's deceptive, and it got me somehow. It got me. I knew better. I know better than anybody because I lived it in the home as a child, and it still got me. And it's incredible how that can happen still. But it's struck generations of my family, and I don't know how far back, but in order to ensure my boys' future, I know that I need to cut it off right here and hopefully be an example for them and keep them around fellows who, the heathens they know. Every time I go to a kindred gathering, the big guys, they're all holding babies, and I have 2 of them, so I'm glad to have the help. And, and they know the men in their lives are heathens, and it doesn't equate being a drunk.
I think bringing luck into it was that's a really important thing. And for the boys and girls listening at home, remember we're talking about luck with a capital L here, the very heathen concept of it. And you have to be able to recognize what your luck is, what your individual luck is, what your family's luck is, and sometimes that's one of those things. You might have issues like this, and it can be more mundane things, obviously, than the big issues like this. My family has terrible luck with vehicles. Just has every generation of my family all the way back. As long as there have been vehicles, I'm pretty sure we probably had problems with boats and carriages too. But you get into, I recognize that I take steps to avoid that. But then there's the big issues like this. What is your family's luck when it comes to things like addiction? Look into your family history. This is another one of those important things about, we don't just look to our ancestors to honor them. We also look to our ancestors to understand ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and for me, and I'll be completely honest, because my particular, I see in my family generationally where the problem has been the same way, and yeah, I don't want it to go any further. I don't want to push that not being able to deal. I am a member of a life accepting faith, belief, whatever you want to call it. And so that means that I can't hide from it, and I can't hide behind my addictions. I have to accept things as they are and learn to cope with them. And that, that's been one of the real good things about being heathen is it's so much easier for me to accept that. It's so much easier for me to say, okay, this is life and this is how it is. I'm not trying to live a life for something in the future. Or, I'm not trying to live a life to get to a certain afterlife destination or whatever. I'm just trying to live a life to do right by my people.
Yeah, and I think inside and outside of recovery as a heathen, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, I try in each and every one of my actions, I try and do them with the idea that if my kids saw me, would they be okay with this? If my ancestors saw me, would they be okay with this? And if my mom was watching, would they be okay with this? And the only times I answer no is usually when I'm in traffic yelling at somebody. But other than that, most of my actions are honorable heathen actions. But I learned that from the 12 steps, and that brought me to heathenry, and I use them in conjunction. I wish I'd have found it a lot longer ago, heathenry. Small families, I didn't take it into account that my ancestors might be a part of this as well. Didn't know a lot about them, and never took the time to really, But yeah.
Now, I want to ask you this question because you have more experience with dealing with other heathens with that may have addictions or issues. How do you deal with someone in your kindred or your tribe or whatever that word is who may have a problem, and you need to basically tell them, okay, you have an issue? I mean, how would you deal with that? I'm just curious.
Was that for me?
Yes, for you.
Well, we've had, I don't know what to call it. We have, some of my guys are in a motorcycle club, a clean and sober club. So our prospective kindred members, I guess we call them hang-arounds, and prospects or applicants. But, we've had a couple that didn't work out because they were, at the strip club and doing, kind of going back to kind of grimy stuff. And it sort of worked itself out. There was actually, sometimes people, when they, around me anyways, when we have a certain understanding of what our friendship entails, when that level of, I guess, lifestyle, when the lifestyle shift happens, those folks generally don't want to gravitate towards people who are actively living in a different way, at least in my small experience.
Yeah, because we ran, my kindred ran into that. We've actually had to remove somebody from our kindred many years ago. It's been 10 years ago. And that was kind of what we did, because I don't know, we could have, I sometimes I feel like we could have handled it better. At the same time, it was his issue. He had to deal with it. There was nothing I could do short of, hog tying him and, taking him to a recovery center or something. And even then, that wouldn't have worked because he didn't want to get better.
Right.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just a little add-on to that. We have some members who are in recovery and some who aren't, and some who started in it and who are no longer. And as long as people's lifestyles are still being honorable, then I don't care what you're doing, really. As long as it's honorable. And I don't have a problem with people drinking or certain other substances, as long as they maintain an honorable heathen lifestyle. Then I'll call them part of my kindred if they're a member. And my wife, I met her in recovery. She kind of, I guess maybe is fixed. I don't know. I'm not, so I keep going. But she's good. But every now and then, it's not cut and dry of who stays. And I don't want to be culty either and be like, you have to do it this way. Things change, and not everything's black and white. And I have to adapt to some of that stuff. And usually it's worked out. But we did have a guy oath one time, a guy who was hanging out. He oathed to never use again and then relapsed right away. And we all kind of saw it coming anyways. But we told him not. We're real big on not oathing unless it's, oaths are super important, taken very seriously. And I don't know. He broke it and it hasn't worked out well for him. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
So we do have one question I want to get to from the IRC, and then I have a question of my own. But I think this is one we can all take. If you break that chain of addiction, right, does that impact your family luck? Does it change your family luck? And that's from Adara, myth singer in the IRC.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, it seems that to me that, based on my understanding, that, luck is not something that's static. It's not something that this is what you have, and that's all you have, and it can't change because, there's evidence to the contrary within, especially the sagas that I've seen. So, I definitely think that, if you just sit there and don't do anything, then yeah, nothing's going to change. But yeah, I think you can actively change your luck.
Thorin,
Yeah.
you always have an opinion.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide how to start it. So I think the answer to that is yes and no. Your actions are definitely going to affect the luck of your family going forward. But, breaking the cycle of addiction within yourself doesn't necessarily break that particular bit of luck in your family. It's going to change it, certainly. If you are the son of an addict who was the son of an addict who was the son of an addict, and you become an addict, it was one of those things where all the luck was stacked against you on that. If you break that cycle, that luck is still there, but it's lessened. It's starting to change. And it takes quite some time. It's generations for that to change. That's not something that is changed in one generation. I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So yeah, you affect it, you change it, but you don't cure it. You can't cure luck. Luck is.
I absolutely agree, and I think if anything, it's a yes and no as well. It's yeah, the odds are stacked, but the trajectory can change, or at least in my case, if I maintain my path and my boys end up on a path of addiction, me not being actively involved in that will make it so I'm present and can hopefully offer treatment or guidance or something to help alleviate that. But yeah, inaction or the alternative of going back to being an active addict absolutely is going to continue that cycle.
So I think we answered that one pretty well.
Yeah.
My question is, what can those of us who aren't in recovery do to make heathen gatherings more accessible and better for those heathens that are?
Juice horn.
Go ahead, Chris.
We're going to put the burden on you for making our show work today, because none of us are doing very good at it.
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, I mean, the whole, I heard the topic of the Nine Noble Virtues show, but still I do consider hospitality a strategy of my life. And when meeting new heathens, I attempt to be hospitable. If someone says they don't drink, there's probably a good reason for it. And if you insist that they do drink, it might come back to bite you in the butt. So being welcoming and accommodating to people who don't, probably the best thing you can do in that situation.
And
well,
also,
a non-issue as possible.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Don't make it a big deal. Just, okay, sure.
Yeah, I say that puts me in mind of something we briefly mentioned on a previous show. I think it was on a show, a question of hospitality where, if you throw a pig in a pit and make a barbecue out of it to invite all your Muslim neighbors to.
That was on our hospitality show.
That wasn't our hospitality show. Are you being hospitality? Hell no. That's terrible. So the same thing applies. If you have somebody that has an issue and they're trying to tell you they don't drink, trying to tell them, well, you need to drink. That's not hospitality. That's assholery.
That's like telling me. That's like pushing a blueberry muffin in my face and telling me I have to eat it. And then you'd have to take me to the hospital. But you just, don't do that. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, well, Wheaton's law applies to hospitality. Don't be a
yes. Yes.
I mean, that
So
just comes down to, I think, accommodating, being, I mean, if you're going to invite strangers over, there's going to be some variation in the way that they need accommodation. So, and that can be from all sorts of angles, you know. So yeah, that's a good one. But again, I think a level of responsibility comes down to myself and to other recovering substance abusers in addressing that. I was a little bashful, and I was kind of new in recovery when I had my first heathen interaction around the mead horn, but I'd come prepared and find the chieftain or the organizer and mention it beforehand, so it's not an issue right there in Sumble. And so that's where I would take my own personal accountability in it as some special accommodation.
Send an email.
Sure. Yeah.
Beforehand, I also have food allergies, so I'm always asking people for stuff. So, like ahead of time, hey, is there going to be and you have to explain yourself. No is a complete sentence. I have to tell myself that all the time. You don't have to explain yourself. If you just say, hey, is there going to be a juice horn? Or would you mind providing a non-alcoholic horn?
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about...
Full stop.
Yeah, we've talked about, Cascadia mood a lot. And, we've put out there that we want, people, if you have some sort of accommodation issue, a disability of any sort or whatnot, to, let us know about it to make sure we can try to accommodate it. That goes right in there with that sort of thing. If you can't drink alcohol, but you're coming to a thing where there's going to be a lot of alcohol, I think we've discussed there's going to be alcohol at this, make sure you let us know, that oh, I can't drink. You don't have to tell us why. You just say, I don't drink. And that's going to apply to everything. We're not going to assume that means that, I don't drink except for Sumble. It just means you don't drink. So, I'm saying that about Cascadia Moot and telling you to contact us, but I think that anybody should treat any event they're going to, any gathering of any sort they're going to that way. Let the hosts know, because the host can't do anything about it if they don't know.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I know I'm not one of the chieftains of my group, but I know for a fact you show up at one of our things and you say, hey, I don't drink, we're going to make sure you're taken care of.
Yep.
Just let us know.
Yeah. And, and Josh mentioned his kindred, and I think if I'm going to show up and not drink, I'm going to show up with some good food and maybe do a little distract there and hopefully show some work in some other departments.
A lot of times I show up with fancy, organic, cold pressed apple juice or stuff, something for the non-alcoholic horn. Because basically then all I want you to do is provide me a horn. I can also bring that. But, I usually show up with my own, just, it's easier. Yeah,
and I've done that as well, and I provide the alternative too, because if I need special accommodation and it's not my event, then I'm going to help with that as much as possible. Right. So I think for anybody that's a heathen in recovery and hasn't been to a group event, I mean that's part of my personal etiquette when engaging in group events. Is I bring a horn that may possibly be used at Sumble, and bring the drinks. I'll let somebody know, and sometimes it's good to bring somebody with you that doesn't drink also. Like for me, I have other heathen friends in recovery, and be willing to back out the day of if you're not in a good headspace and can't be around alcohol too. It's good to know. Like sometimes you can commit to something, and sometimes you have to decommit to that if it means saving your butt.
Very
I think
true.
it's a valid point to make. If it's not a good place for you to be in, then it's important for everyone, not just yourself, but for the everybody who could be there, for you to know that.
Yeah, because I know I have been to events, and I guess I can't speak for the rest of you guys, where you've had a drunken asshole ruin everything for people. I mean, I have, where we almost got kicked out of a place that we really love to go because of one drunken asshole. And yeah, don't be that guy.
Well, just because of people in recovery doesn't mean they can't figure out ways to get everybody kicked out of a space too.
That is true. That is true. Yeah,
I have gotten people kicked out of places when I was perfectly sober.
True.
So, go ahead, Thorin.
I was just gonna say I'm really glad that this conversation is not just covering behavior for heathens in recovery, but for behavior for heathens around them, because I think that's just as important. We're in a community-focused religion that you can't put all the onus on one person, even if they're the source of I don't want to call it a problem, the source of the issue to be solved. Everybody has to help solve that.
I agree. And like I said, I think one of the big things is just don't make a big deal about it. For me, that can be, I hate having to explain. Like, the alcohol thing is not, but for my issues, sometimes I don't like explaining it, especially to people I don't know very well, because I have some embarrassment about it.
Because it's none of their damn business.
Yeah, and so, don't, if somebody doesn't want to share, they don't have to share. And, be respectful of people's privacy. And that kind of goes, if somebody says, hey, I can't have onions, well, they may be allergic to onions. They may be taking a medication where you can't eat onions. That has to exist somewhere. Like so many things, it comes back to hospitality and being a good host and being a good guest. And as someone who's in recovery, me being a good guest means I don't engage in things that could potentially take me out of my recovery.
So we are running up on the last 10 minutes, and we have a special thing that we're doing today. A thing that's important.
Oh, yeah.
We have another book to give away.
Yes, we do.
We haven't done that in a while.
We haven't. And this is another Ben Wagner book. He's been really good to us in giving us material to give to you guys. But we're going to do this contest a little different. At promptly 8:30, there's a blog post that will go live on heathentalk.com. When you get to that blog post, you have to comment and submit a name for, let me see here, that bad boy right there. That is my newest pet snake, and he doesn't have a name.
And he's a rescue, too, so.
He is.
He's precious.
He's
what we're
been
saying,
through a couple of homes.
Is you need to give Josh's snake a name.
Yeah,
thanks for that, Thorin. Nobody else made that connection.
I told you. In fact, I hold to my opinion that I think it should be a requirement that anytime they write the word snake, it needs to be in quotes.
Y'all write snake however you want. So the only request is the snake's nickname in the store was Mr. A, so I'm looking for A names. We will pick a winner. What do you think, Lauren? 1 week or two, just to give people an opportunity to get in there and vote?
I'm going to say 2 weeks because that also gives people a chance because we have about a 10-day delay before we're up in the archives, so that gives people who are here in the archives a chance to win as well.
So 10 days from the 20th of January.
So is when the podcast will go live, so we'll say 2 weeks. So the 3rd. The 3rd of February.
So by the 3rd of February, tell us what you want to name that gorgeous snake right there. And if you win, we'll send you a book.
And can I tell them about that book?
Absolutely, Lauren. Tell them
what they
can't do a
win.
Bob Barker voice, so...
So the book is called Norse Magical and Herbal Healing. It is a translation of a little book that was known as AM 434A, and it is a treasure trove of medieval medical knowledge that was compiled around the year 1500.
I don't know why he changed the name.
Yeah, I don't know why they would do that. Anyway, it is. It has a list on over healing uses for over 90 different herbs, health advice, a number of magical spells, charms, prayers, runes, and symbols to bring health, wealth, and good fortune. While the book is Christian as I have it, it's actually one of my favorite things that Ben has translated. It is kind of Christianized. You can weed the Christianity out of it to see the underlying kind of cultural and historical stuff. And this was actually the first complete English translation of this book. And Ben is going to send that out to the winner. And so good luck. Come up with a good name for Josh's adorable little snake, because it is, I think it's so cute.
Now, if I may real quick, the claims made in this book have not been evaluated by the FDA, and Heathen Talk makes no claims that it can treat or cure any illness you may have. This book is purely for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Historical research purposes only.
Historical research.
Don't go sticking leeches on things is what we're saying.
No bloodletting.
No, we're not saying that. You can feel free to stick leeches on things, but Heathen Talk is not encouraging you to do so, and we're not saying it's going to cure anything you have.
So, you now know about the contest. We'll put a Facebook thing up saying that there's a contest. It'll be a whole thing. Chris, we're coming up towards the end of the podcast. Do you have anything at all that you want to plug or talk about or brag about? The floor is yours. Whatever you want to say to our audience, to us, if you want to tell us we're doing it wrong, whatever you want to do.
You guys definitely been doing it wrong for a while now. I've listened to almost every episode, and there was something wrong about them all. No, it's been a great pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I would like to give a shout out to my buddy Steve Dawson. He's a Kindred member. He's part of my Kindred. He just had a hip surgery, and he's also got a pacemaker. He's an old guy, and we love him, and I hope him a speedy recovery. And I've talked about your Kindred quite a bit, Josh, and I just would like to thank all the chieftains from your Kindred, for opening up their homes to me and showing me how to do heathenry not wrong. Less wrong than others. So, yeah, that's all I've got.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure I speak for the entire Kindred when I say you're welcome with us anytime you want.
Thanks, bud.
Thorin, do you have anything to pitch before I let Lauren loose on her project thing that she wants to talk about?
Nothing specific. I just want to point out to anybody that's still interested in Cascadia Mood to feel free to shoot us questions about it. We have a trip coming up next month where we're going to take pictures of the site so that we can let all of you people see exactly where this is going to be held. Because it's all well and good that you can look it up on the internet, but we want to show you some pictures of our own. Other than that, send us your questions. We'll answer them best we can.
There you go. Lauren, I'm sure you've been chomping at the bit. What do you got for us?
I just needed a couple of minutes because we have a new event on our event calendar. And it's coming up this weekend, January 24th. The New York City Heathens are having a brunch moot, and it'll be at Bavaria Beer House in Lower Manhattan. Family-oriented event, is not wheelchair accessible. You want more information or more information about the New York City Heathens, we have a link to their Facebook on our event calendar. And if you have a Heathen event coming up, there's a form right there on the bottom of our events calendar page. Fill it in. Let us know what's going on. We'll get it on our calendar. We'll announce it on the air. Links for Cascadia Moot are there, as well as we have information up about Troth Moot in June and Midwest Winter Moot in November. So please let us help you by being able to, like I said, just give us a chance to announce your stuff because we want to support local heathens doing.
We do. There was one other thing, and I timed this so that I would have time to do this, that once I can find the post, I was told I have to read some of the things that were said to me by good friends. By good friends, I mean people who are good people and also my friends. Because I put out a call for some support. And I asked for insults. I asked
Oh, those were
people
great.
like Thorin and Neff, who's a fan of the show, and even our wonderfully eloquent Toby to go on and insult me and tell me exactly what I was doing wrong and make me cry. Thorin, do you remember what you said to me?
I do remember approximately what I said to you, yes.
So why don't you go tell everybody what you really think of me?
Do you want me to tell them what I really think of you, or do you want me to repeat the insult I came up with on your request?
Go ahead and tell us the insult you came up with on request.
I told Josh that his theology was about as deep as a kiddie pool, and he still manages to drown in it on a regular basis.
Which was pretty hurtful.
Oh, that's terrible.
I cannot find this post.
Yeah, I'm trying to
However,
find it too because I can't. I was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was more than likely hopped up on pain pills for whatever I said, so I don't remember it.
I'm gonna go ahead and let everybody know that.
Here it is. I found it.
Lauren, what you got to read some of those for us because I can't find it.
I hope a popcorn kernel gets stuck in a very inconvenient spot of your mouth. May your coffee always slightly be too hot. Let's see.
I'd just like to point out, really, slightly too hot. You just choke the stuff down.
Hang on,
Those aren't even insults. They're curses. There's a difference, people. Come on now.
Our friend Neff says, I don't want to talk to you no more, you empty-headed animal food trough wiper. I fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
It should be pointed out that was
get the references.
Yeah.
It should be pointed out that was one of about 20 that Neff supplied. Roughly.
Yeah, your friend Jim said you're a closet Christian Republican who drinks Bud Light. Your favorite brand is One Direction. Your application to Y'all Cato was denied because you don't have enough camo.
So
I'm not going to read Toby's. I'm not going to read Toby's because it's going to piss. Yeah, just not going to read that one. Let's see. You're doing it right.
You can't stop her now, Josh. You got her on a roll.
Yeah, I'm trying to scan through and find the good ones, and also because I know.
You gave her carte blanche to insult the boss on air. It's
yeah. Shut up! You'll never be the man your mother is. You're the reason. You're the reason Marc doesn't want to be seen on Heathen Talk. You're the reason we can't have nice things. A lot of these are Neff. Holy crap, Neff read a lot of things. So I'm trying to get to Jenna. Our friend Jenna from Tears Good Hand thinks you're handsome.
I'm trying to figure out how that's an insult, but I just want you to know, Jenna, when you listen to this, I'm deeply offended.
There was the classic "You're ugly" and your mother dresses you funny.
You know, I think my favorite insult there is that everybody likes my brother better. And that just made my heart warm because my mother likes my brother better too.
Yeah.
So,
and I do want to close it with Marc's because I thought it was really, really great. You'd make a fine Federalist.
see, that one cuts.
Yeah, that's awful.
That one cuts hard.
That's worse than mine.
So I just want to thank everybody who stepped up and gave me a little bit of humor. I've been stressed out the last week or two, and so I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you guys. However, that's the end of the show, and y'all are doing it wrong.
You're not the boss of me.
Everybody have a
No,
great
I'm
week.
your boss. I'm not his boss.
Everybody have a great week.